Hey guys, I promised I will do a Tekken Bloodline review as well as JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Stone Ocean, but I decided I'm going to start from the Rings of Power first. Yeah, I've seen the first two episodes, so yeah, I'll get this review for you guys first. And first I'm going to say, the Lord of the Rings trilogy by Peter Jackson are my most beloved movies ever. Those movies are my favorite. They have been with me since childhood. Like, I remember seeing all three of them in theaters when I was like 7, 8 and 9 years old. And I was already always in love with this world. So yeah, those are my favorite movies ever. And I do even love the Hobbit movies. They don't quite reach the heights of the Lord of the Rings movies, but I still love the Hobbit movies and think they're very underrated. So, what did I think of the first two episodes of the Rings of Power? This show is exactly what it looked like it was going to be and what I thought it was going to be. It's basically a bland, generic fantasy that's simply set in the, or at least it claims to be, set in the Middle-earth and using Middle-earth characters. But the world doesn't feel like Middle-earth at all. Like as I said, it literally feels like bland generic fantasy from those low-budget 80s movies. It doesn't feel Tolkien at all. The story itself is not that interesting at all. It starts with a pretty interesting prologue that summarizes events from the Silmarillion books. I haven't read those books, but heard lots of great things about them. Yeah, it summarizes events from the Silmarillion books, but it barely actually even scratches the surface, just mentions them in a 20-second speech before later quickly getting on to the story, which is just Galadriel suspecting Sauron is still alive, which we do know from the Lord of the Rings that he is, and basically setting on a quest to find him. And this is simply not interesting. Like, the writers do nothing to make us care for any of the characters. Like, the story introduces a bunch of random characters, but it does nothing to make us actually care about them. If it wasn't for the fact that this is Middle-earth, I would likely even not watch the second episode. I could even possibly quit in the middle of the first episode. Because like, the story didn't grab me in at all. And as I said, it didn't feel like Tolkien at all. It literally felt like any random generic fantasy show. Literally. The only characters I somewhat care about are Galadriel and Elrond, and even they are not faithful to the way they were portrayed by Tolkien. Galadriel was very powerful, but she was always all about magic and wisdom. She was never supposed to be a warrior like this show portrays her as. And her backstory is very different from the way her backstory in the Lord of the Rings. Like, her backstory was very different in the Lord of the Rings books. Like, she was never a warrior, and she was always, as I said, about wisdom and magic. So yeah, Galadriel and Elrond might be the best characters, but they're nothing faithful to their Tolkien portrayal. Like, Galadriel, it would be much better if her role was given to an original character. Like, if they created an original warrior elf princess character, that would be much better, instead of giving it to Galadriel fast, completely butchering her character. So yeah, I don't care for the characters, and the characters that we already know are completely butchered. The acting here is also pretty bad. Like, it's very wooden, and I can see how the actors have no passion on the project they're working on. Like, for example, with the actor who plays Elrond, I can totally tell he's acting. Like, he doesn't convince me in his role at all. And yeah, so the acting is terrible as well. And so far, even the world building isn't all that great. Like, it's not bad, but it's nothing like the Tolkien world building. Like, Tolkien was likely the best lore and world builder ever. Like, the Middle Earth, like, is probably some of the best world building in any fiction history. But the world building here feels also so bland. Like, the world doesn't feel very massive on an epic scale like the Peter Jackson movies. Like, those movies literally feel such a big epic scale. But this show, for some reason, even though they showed us so many different locations technically far apart from each other, and yet this world still feels much smaller and so generic. So yeah, even though it's supposedly based on a Tolkien story, even the world building so far is not that good actually. Now I'll get to few positives. Like, the visuals and the landscapes in this movie are admittedly pretty beautiful. Like, some of the cinematography is admittedly gorgeous. They did pick some great locations to film. I'll give them this credit. And also another thing I liked, and that's the only scene I did actually like, and the only time I was actually somewhat hooked in the story, was when Elrond visited King Durin, like, in his kingdom in Khazad-dûm. Like, that was the only time I was actually somewhat invested in the story. So I guess I'll give them a credit to portraying the dwarves well. They did a very good job here. But other than that, the show is pretty bad. Overall, Rings of Power is exactly what I thought it would be. A generic fantasy story that claims to be set in Middle-earth and uses Tolkien characters. It's pretty bad. I give it like a 2 out of 10. I give 1 point for all the scenes with the dwarves and the landscapes. But other than that, the show is pretty bad. So, those are my honest thoughts on the Rings of Power. What did you think of the first 2 episodes of the Rings of Power? Did you like them? Did you not? Please tell me your opinions below. Press the like button. Please subscribe to this channel, and I'll talk to you soon in another video. Talk to you later. Bye!